This week, Emmet and I look at 3 more issues of Jack Kirby's seminal run on Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth. We hope you'll spread the word about Deconstructing Comics, tell your friends about us, share episodes on social media, and also send us suggestions for topics we could cover. Email us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. This is Tim.
This is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Emmet in Country Victoria, Australia. How are you?
Nailed it. I'm doing really well. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
I didn't call you Kumar or anything.
Nope. Got it right.
Or say that you were currently in Ireland, which you're not, or anything like that.
I've been for some time.
Okay, so last time we discovered that we're talking more and more about each Kamandi issue, and there's no point in trying to cram in 6. So we did 3 last time. We're doing 3 again today, issues 32, 33, 34. And at this rate, we'll have 2 more episodes after this before we get to the end of Kirby's involvement in Kamandi.
I am confident we can do this.
Yeah. So, let's go straight into issue 32, which is a giant-size issue because it includes a reprint of Kamandi number 1.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to see. It seems like just within this time, Kirby's art has kind of evolved on drawing the character. Well, for one thing, his hair's gotten longer since then. It's relatively short in that first issue.
Yeah, and it's interesting just looking at the cover as well, because they're talking about the first issue of Kamandi, and in relative terms, it's not that long ago, but we already have that language, the classic origin Kamandi issue. Like there's this idea of, it's the classic. It's literally just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, issue 32. I think it was monthly, so it'd be like about 3 years earlier. Not even that, but. Yeah, it's a classic now.
Whatever. Okay.
And also a big spine tingler with guerrilla commandos and a thing from space.
Amazing. Yeah.
And
there is a line about guerrilla commandos later on in this that made me laugh too. But it's just guerrilla commandos. And one commando in particular bears a resemblance to another classic Marvel, I believe, Kirby creation. So that made me happy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Kamandi is riding in an official Imperial boat with Tufton and his troops, returning to the island after Ben's episode of being huge and metallic. And
in no way at all plagiarizing the album cover from Queen. My heartfelt apologies to everyone involved in that, and thank you for issuing that retraction, Tim. Another thing, in a previous episode, you asked me, what is that kind of vehicle they're riding? And the word I was struggling for was hydrofoil. That's the word I was trying. It's just popped into my head now. I didn't look it up. It just popped back in. I wonder if this is too, this vehicle. But yeah, like a light seafaring motorized light boat. Yeah, hydrofoil.
Okay. So they get back to the island and Ben's back to normal, and Tufton's kind of puzzled. If this is your friend, Kamandi, then how could he have been the giant?
Yes.
Well, he was, and now he's not.
But the next line's incredible. I'm Prince Tufton, son of great Caesar. I don't like tall tales. Tell stories. Oh,
yeah, nice
tell
pun.
Stories. Oh, it's so funny. And I messed it up.
I don't like tall stories. Right. And then what was also funny was that Kamandi says, we got to find Dr. Canus. And Tufton's like, I almost forgot about him.
I mean, it does remind you that, like a lot of other writers, when they're reintroducing characters, they just have the little caption box. This is Prince Tufton. This is Dr. Canus. This is so-and-so. This is, And Kirby typically doesn't seem to do this. He has characters in dialogue remind the reader. but as a result, the dialogue's quite unnatural. So you've got people announcing themselves by their full name. Like, I am Prince Tufton, where is Dr. Canus? Canus is back in the island. Oh, I'd forgotten about him. Of course, he wouldn't have.
No.
But in order for the sake of the reader, now we have a sense of, that's where he was. He was back with the ship. So that's what that all is. It's so unnatural and old school because a lot of people just skip to that's just an editorial note or literally just have captions beside the characters just spelling out their names so we know who they are. But yeah, that's what this scene's about. Just setting the scene, as it were, for these 3 issues.
So they find Dr. Canus, and he's with the energy ball that we saw in the previous issue. Yeah, that refers to itself as me. I am me. I can be we. Now I am us. But then the fireball gets in kind of a bad mood and says, I want to go home, and starts zapping everybody. Until Canus just says, stop it, stop. And just calms the fireball down. It's
funny watching a dog training a higher life form, in a way that we would say scold a dog. That appears to be the joke here. But yeah, Canus is repeatedly shown here to be like a pure rationalist. Like a lot of his actions in these issues are about him just trying to understand more, and he will advance that agenda the best he can. So he's an interesting character. He's just pure reason. He's interested in this creature because it just represents a field of discovery. That's why. But yeah, he scolds it like a pet here almost.
Right. And as a result of the fireball, the energy ball zapping them, now Kamandi and Tufton are covered with sand. And yeah, again, we get one of these blunt Kirby replies when Tufton says, this sand has made a mess of me. This is an affront to the son of great Caesar. Kamandi says, oh, be quiet. To a prince. Oh, be quiet.
It's like RuPaul's Drag Race. Everyone's just been really bitchy.
Yeah.
They're all mean bitches on this island. But yeah, this is again, last episode I assumed we were going to get to this story, but this is the page I was referring to when I made mention of lots of sand humor, like lots of jokes about being covered in sand, and that's this page.
Right. And then they start like noting how each other looks funny with sand all over them, and then they just start kind of cracking up. I don't know, this felt a little stiff to me, a little unnatural. What did you think of this scene?
It's goofy. It's a goofy scene. I don't like give it a hard time because it's literally just a scene of these 2 characters being too po-faced and serious, and then like breaking down to giggles. Yeah.
And Tufton reminds us that he's still a teenager, but he's got all this responsibility for his dad with war and conquest and everything. So, yeah, I mean, especially since he's a tiger, we can't really tell by looking at him how old he is. I don't know how long real tigers actually live, but what would be the equivalent of a teenage tiger, but...
What, he's 5?
So now the gorillas are coming back in these boats, and they start to attack Tufton's ship, and so there's a big battle scene here. And one of the leader of the gorillas is Ram Jam.
Yeah, Ram Jam's a cool dude.
And it almost made me wonder if the band Ram Jam was named after him. I don't know.
Did you think Ram Jam bore a resemblance to... I mean, Kirby's done a lot of World War II characters, but it seemed to be a Nick Fury riff to me. With the cigarillos and everything, and the eye patch, and then his logo as well, which is like the Death Said bat. You had the Howling Commandos in Marvel, Timely, whatever. With Nick Fury, was that again this idea of screaming animals. These actually are animals now, so it's kind of putting a hat on a hat. But
But yeah, he's got the eye patch and everything. Yeah, he does look a lot like Nick Fury of that era.
And he's similarly like no nonsense guff and just like get it done and do whatever needs to be done for the mission, that kind of type.
And so the gorilla's attack knocks everybody out, including Kamandi. Drink.
It's too early to drink. It's still afternoon here.
Okay, well, later on, have one for Kamandi getting knocked out again.
Later on with my dinner, yes.
But yeah, Ramjam's not interested in quote unquote animals, so he just tells them to leave Kamandi and Ben alone. They need to find Tufton and hold him for ransom. Yeah,
and this sort of prisoner of war gambit happens a couple of times in these issues as well. So that's sort of interesting. The idea of taking hostages and trying to force negotiation with the other side. Again, Kamandi's really lucky that his status effectively saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm surprised that they didn't just kill the animal. Like, I get that he's not. They don't perceive him as a threat, but at the same time, it's just like in the war movies, you always have like the barking dog, and the evil soldiers goes and then shoots the dog. That kind of scene. I am Tim. Just for context, I am just coming off a very long viewing of the latest James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which features lots of cruelty towards animals. It's very sad. It's very tear-jerking. But people have noticed in James Gunn movies, particularly The Suicide Squad, which is a movie I quite liked, lots of animal cruelty. The idea of animal cruelty and birds in particular being killed or injured was a recurring trope, and it seems he just leaned into it with this Guardians of the Galaxy movie. There's lots of animal cruelty. In fact, it's the plot. It's the main plot of the movie.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit emotionally fragile when it comes to dead animals. But yeah, this jumped out at me. Just the idea of them sparing the downed pet, if you like.
Yeah, well, there have been a number of cases in this book where I kind of felt like in real life, Kamandi would have been done for, but because he's the main character of the book, then they have to say like, oh, don't worry about him. We'll just leave him alone. We won't kill him or capture him or whatever.
But this is why the drinking game with Kamandi is such a fatal game, because you'll have cirrhosis of the liver. He keeps getting knocked out, left entirely unarmed and vulnerable, and he is not killed.
Right.
Keeps happening.
Yeah, the gorillas are on the island. I forgot to mention, and that's where everybody got knocked out. And Kamandi wakes up and manages to get away because he's the main character. Doesn't get shot, and he goes to warn Dr. Canus. And Dr. Canus is still, doing tests on this fireball, living fireball. And trying to understand the nature of it. And this being comes from a quasar. And he mentions, I've struck a bargain with it, a strange and most unusual bargain, which is explained a little later. But now, the gorillas are approaching the flying saucer, which Canus is using to examine the fireball. And they're trying to kind of scare the gorillas away. Canus says, stay where you are. I'm Dr. Canus, first scientist to Great Caesar, and I'm not defenseless. And Kamandi says, he means it, fellas. I've seen his power as he deals in witchcraft. I'm an animal, but he made me talk.
And the soldier who he encountered previously and punched out when he was making his escape sort of testifies to this. It's true. The animal talks. The pages previously, I just want to quickly note one of my favorite lines of this issue is Canus. They'll cut short my work just when I'm on the verge of a spectacular breakthrough. And that's kind of what I was meaning when I talked about him being motivated purely by reason of discovery. Like, it's the idea of there's an impending army approaching, and he's like, oh no, that'll interfere with my study.
How inconvenient! An army is approaching.
It's such a bother. Like, he actually takes some direct action here. This is what we'll see unfold here is not a bad plan to defeat the guerrillas, but at the same time, up until this point, he seemed like entirely distracted and singularly focused on this extraterrestrial life form.
Yes. So then the being rises out of the sand and appears to be a humanoid creature made of sand. And of course, the gorillas shoot at it completely ineffectively, and even a hand grenade temporarily discombobulates it, but then kind of comes back and starts zapping everybody, the gorillas.
And our eye-patched war hero turns coward. He's like, Canus, call it off. It'll fry me. He stammers. It'll fry me.
So Canus and Kamandi take the gorillas as prisoners and keep them in the flying saucer. And then Ben and Tufton arrive with some tiger soldiers, and they're going to take the gorilla prisoners and then join the naval battle.
Which we had forgotten was still happening.
Yeah.
There is a little aside here where Canus says, no, it's not Canus. Is it Canus? No, it's Kamandi. They can't fly it or wreck it. And, okay, they can't fly it. I can accept that. The technology is, too advanced, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's limbs that you're required that, bipeds don't have. Or wreck it, though? I think they could wreck it.
Yeah, theoretically, you could destroy anything.
Yeah, I don't know Kamandi's confidence in that front. Where it's coming from. But yeah, I had completely forgotten that Ben was left unconscious on the beach. Kamandi left him there.
So Kamandi and Canus are staying on the island with the energy ball. So Canus says, we've got a job to do here. Kamandi says, until a way is found to send this being home, Dr. Canus is going to fashion a body for, and the energy ball says, me. What will me look like? It will be the surprise of the century. Next, the birth bag.
Stop overselling it, Jack, please.
Yeah, I mentioned last time, he's so overselling the story. Like, you've never seen anything like this before. I think one of the next issues here opens that way. Issue 33. Now, I'll just mention here, the cover of issue 33 anticipates something that doesn't happen until 34. Where Kamandi and Canus are looking at a figure. We see the shadow of the figure, which for some reason is cast behind them, but not on them. And Kamandi says, Professor, that thing you created, it's But
it's worse than that. The issue ends with the reveal still coming. It's actually another moment of, we don't get this until the next issue. So, I mean, it's the opposite of a spoiler. It's such a tease. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then, this is the issue. You've never read anything like this! 3 exclamation points. Sure, our young hero has been shanghaied, but by a UFO? Sure, he's on a desert island, but with a dog scientist? And now they're watching a naval battle being fought by tigers and gorillas. This is far out? This is too much? Not if you come to Earth AD, friend, and follow Kamandi, the last boy on Earth.
Okay, at the risk of spoilers, I finally watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the new animated Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I saw it.
And you saw it too? Okay. Yeah. So highlight for me, listeners, literally skip ahead 10 seconds. Highlight for me, Spider-Cat. Like immediate, and it's a blink and you'll miss it moment. But yeah, that movie just takes the premise of, let's put a thing in a spider costume. Just keep doing that ad infinitum. And it's a joke which I think only works because it's so blink and you'll miss it. You know, if you actually dwell on it, it starts to become unwieldy. And what I appreciate with Jack here, with, you know, apes and tigers fighting at sea, is, you know, he actually does inject the proceedings with a lot of drama. So you stop seeing them as apes and tigers, you start seeing them as characters. That's the point. It's just a war comic that happens to feature apes and tigers. That's where the strength of these issues come in. But the fact that he keeps leaning on that, oh my god, the thing beneath that mask is a wolf or a gorilla or a tiger or a lion, or, you know, which keeps coming back. And that supersized issue, we didn't touch on it, but like it literally is just the first issue again, just to bring new fans, if they're out there, up to speed. That's how that issue introduced the concept of these animal people. And you have raised a couple of times in these conversations how we keep seeing masked figures, and then the reveal, it keeps happening. And it's a toolbox that I wish had been put aside, because when he just sticks to the drama of these characters in this world, fighting over territory, fighting over resources, whatever it is, it works. Like, it actually works. And it just is a war comic. That's fine.
Yeah,
but no.
I mean, when he oversells it like that, I'm thinking, okay, so you mean all the other comics I've read are just completely realistic stories? Okay, and this is the only one that has unusual stuff in it. I mean, yeah, sure, animals that are humans. I mean, I've seen a lot of...
Crypto could fly. Crypto had a cape and he could fly. That doesn't even make sense.
A dog scientist. Oh, you mean Mr. Peabody? Mr. Yes. Peabody and Sherman? Mr. Peabody. I've seen dog scientists before.
Doesn't Mr. Peabody say, quiet you? Doesn't he say that? He's quiet you.
He's never that rude. He's always really polite and studious.
It might be a joke from The Simpsons or something. I'm getting confused.
That could be. They parodied everything.
I think they parodied it, or somebody. Maybe it was Family Guy. One of those shows that just had, like, again, a blink and you'll miss it, parody that is funny in the moment, but if you think about it, it's like not as funny. But yeah, no, the hype isn't real. Like, the hype is unwieldy, and Jack's not as good at that because he's pitching to a sort of industry standard of hyperbolic writing that is simply is not in his wheelhouse.
Well, yeah, he's not Stan Lee.
Which is the thing we keep saying. But like the ideas by themselves and the stories being told are good, are strong, and the visuals are good and strong and not hindered by, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, or oh, that's ridiculous, or that's too complicated. That's what the Kirby era and DC is all about. It's just like these incredible visuals and these interesting stories, but it's just shackled by this, I'm going to call it marketing speak that sort of keeps being pumped into it, and it's just not natural. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I was he inspired just because that was what he was used to all those years at Marvel? Is that kind of got into his head?
Well, we've done a lot of reading on the sort of politics around acquiring Kirby, and there was this expectation that he would recreate the Marvel 60s era over at DC, and I think one of the notable features of that era was this patter that would open and close an issue. So that's what I think somebody has literally gone to him and say, oh, could you do that thing that you and Stan did?
That could be.
Because it was the one thing that Stan did. It didn't have any involvement. I'm not saying Stan did nothing, but it's just like everything else, Jack had a role to play. There was at least some initial input from him or actual progressed work that then got recontextualized by Stan. Whereas here is the one thing that Jack doesn't have. And I think if you just take it out, if you don't have it at all, you just have the stories, I think it works. I think it works better. Because, again, you keep getting pulled up by these like closing title cards with these extravagant descriptions of what's to come, and it's not really engaging because it's it's not going to land. It's not going to be like that.
Yeah. More Kamandi discussion in a minute, But first, a reminder to join us for 20th Century TV and music trivia quiz videos and more on our Patreon page. Every month, patrons donating $4 a month or more also get a full-length podcast episode reviewing an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man from the 1960s. Check out all our rewards at patreon.com/deconcomics. If you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. Edward and Alphonse Elric, as a result of attempting the forbidden act of resurrecting their mother with alchemy, have paid the price. Edward lost an arm and a leg. Alphonse lost his whole body, his soul now attached to a suit of armor. Together they search for a way to make their bodies complete again and uncover a deadly plot by their country's military rulers. That's the concept of Hiromu Arakawa's Fullmetal Alchemist, one of the best manga ever made. Tim and Patrick are rereading Arakawa's masterwork in search of interesting sound effects, translation errors, goofy humor, and, oh yeah, a great story. The podcast is The Law of Equivalent Exchange, a chapter-by-chapter look at the manga Fullmetal Alchemist. New episodes every other Monday, wherever podcasts are found. What are you willing to exchange? So, Kamandi and Canus are still on the island. They're watching the naval battle through binoculars. Canus says he's going to create an earth body for the energy creature. So, he has a way to do it, which will come up in a bit. We go back to the ship. Boy, I'd really like to know how tigers smoke cigars. I mean, the thing about animals as humanoids, I mean, their mouths are, if you want to be really realistic about it, their mouths are not made for speaking. So I wonder how they must be somehow different in this world that their mouths can form words.
Yeah, but also you just brought up the smoking. I mean, think of the poor whiskers. There's a flaming ember like literally inches away from that whisker. That cat's not happy about that. It's like, no, thank you.
Yeah. So Ben is fighting on behalf of the tigers, and he gets a little too innovative. He throws a fuel drum at the gorillas, thinking that it will blow up near them, but they shoot it in midair, and it explodes and damages the ship. And Tufton is angry at Animal Ben for not following orders, for kind of freelancing. Now, I thought getting this part, maybe starting the previous issue, we haven't really seen in Kamandi a situation where things are happening at two different locations simultaneously. I mean, it happens a little bit, but... Here you've got, some main characters in both places, and we get, a few pages here and then a few pages back over there. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, this feels a little different because it's not all just what Kamandi's doing. Yeah. And yeah, this is, you see actually spending some time with Ben, like trying to justify himself to Tufton is interesting. Like, because every other storyline with him, Kamandi, he serves like a Deus Ex Machina. And I think that really did hit its peak, literally and figuratively, when he became giant. Like he just became a story element. Like that's just what it was all about. Oh no, Ben's big now, and he's mindless. But like he was that character who would just turn up at the end of a story, beginning of a story, to rescue Kamandi, and then he'd get lost again, they'd get separated again, and then he'd come back again, and he'd protect Kamandi. He'd literally be a human shield for him. Interestingly, he does that for Tufton here. Are they shooting like piston truncheons? Is that their ammunition? Is that what the guerrillas are shooting into the ship? It's odd, but he once again proves his usefulness by throwing himself in front of Tufton. Yeah, and turning metallic so that the projectile will just bounce off him. Yeah, although the delivery system apparently hits one of the other Tiger soldiers in the head. Oops. But they spending some time with Ben separate from Kamandi is interesting. And as you said, this sort of story happening in two fronts,
I laughed in the previous issue when Tufton said, "Oh, we've got to get back to the sea battle." And as I said to you before, I was like, I'd forgotten that was still happening. Like, I thought the action had moved, the theater of war had moved inland. I didn't realize that they're actually fighting on two fronts. And that's what this is all about. How they can go back and forth, I don't quite understand in that case, because you'd assume there'd be lots of spread out action. This is Ben, the adventures of Ben and Tufton. He's a tiger. He's a man made of steel who may have inspired Colossus. They solved crimes.
but did not inspire Queen album covers. Not at all.
Did not inspire Queen album covers. I cannot stress that enough to anybody listening. Did not inspire News of the Day album cover.
News of the world, yeah.
Oh, God damn it.
So then we're back at the flying saucer, and we find out what Canus's plan is for creating a body for the energy ball. So he reasons that if mass can be converted to energy, then energy can be converted to mass.
It's incredible. It's incredible. It's just, it's literally, are you familiar with the underpants gnome meme from South Park? There's a scene in South Park, back when South Park was, somewhat good. There's a scene in South Park where we encountered the underpants gnomes, and they've got a business strategy. It involves stealing underpants. Next step, last step, profit. That's pretty much this. Although it's conversion, but like the process of mass converting to energy and energy converting to mass will be entirely different. And it's just like,
so you unburn the mass?
Let's just reverse the equation. It's beautifully done. But again, this is where I really enjoyed that essay by Kirby at the beginning of the Kamandi run, where he's just talking about his ideas of atomic power and physics and natural philosophy. Honestly, and I was going, this man was just interested in ideas. He was just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so he's familiar with the idea of E equals MC squared. So he's looking at it going, okay, well, let's just turn that around.
Right. Yeah. Just reverse the process. So he's got the energy ball in the conversion module, and doing, science stuff to it. And he asks Kamandi to be like the model for the being's body. The being wanted to be like a human. He said he's taken a liking to your species. It wants to look like your kind. So I was wondering if Kamandi was going to turn into a monster or something, but no, he didn't seem to be affected by these rays at all. And so now they just have to wait. I guess it's like they've got cookies in the oven waiting for the timer to ding. But
Kamandi also, like you and Kamandi were on the same page. It's like, it won't change me too, will it, sir? I mean, I'm perfectly willing to remain just as I am. And Dr. Canus is like, you're babbling utter nonsense. Like, he's such a bitch.
Actually, you should be flattered. You were chosen for this stage of the process by the alien itself. So, yeah, so now they're waiting. It's forming, and Kamandi says, forming into what? So Kirby raises a lot of expectations about what this thing could turn out to be when it's changed to a humanoid form. We'll talk about that in the next issue when we actually find out. Then we go back to the ship. The gorillas have retreated for the day. I guess, like, it's quitting time. It reminds me of those old cartoons where the wolf and the sheepdog punch out and go home.
Yes. Oh, amazing. One of my favorite of those. One of my favorite cartoons.
Yeah, I always loved those. Yeah, so they're, taking care of their wounded and whatever. And Ben changes back to normal human form, which is surprising to Tufton. Now, so they have taken Ramjam prisoner, and Tufton wants to use Ramjam to convince the other gorillas to stand down tomorrow. So he has the other soldiers tie Ramjam to this pole and hang some dynamite around his neck. And he says, if the gorillas attack, I'll tip you overboard and blast that dynamite on your way down. And Ben is really outraged. You can't be serious, Tufton. No victory is worth this kind of tactic. But for Tufton, the only important thing is to kind of end this. I'm not after victory, just an end to this stupid killing, he says.
It's not quite clear how that would end the killing.
No.
Not only isn't it's not a great idea because, okay, so you're going to explode this hostage you've just tipped overboard. Right. So he's going overboard and he might actually damage the ship in the explosion. That's one problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've just killed a commanding officer. That's
that just tends to inspire more attacks.
Yeah, you've martyred him.
We've seen in real life. So, also I was interested that Ramjam says, you can't do this. I'm a prisoner of war. I can't be treated this way. So is the Geneva Convention still in force, or have the animals come up with something similar, I wonder?
They've come up with something similar. But again, that speaks to what I was talking about before, the idea of this is just a war comic. Mm-hmm. And he's just telling that story, and it just so happens that the characters are apes and tigers. But yeah, that's exactly it. They have some sort of prisoner of war code of conduct.
Yeah. All right. So then we're back at the flying saucer, and the chamber turns out, just temporarily turned transparent, and they can see the fire in there. Well, Kamandi says it's become like molten lava. And eventually they start to see that it's taking a human form. But then the side of the module becomes opaque and they can't see in anymore.
It reminds me a lot of the opening to The Fifth Element.
Okay.
Have you not seen that movie?
I haven't, no.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, number one, Tim, I recommend you do. Number two, it's a movie from the 90s, mid-90s by Luc Besson. So, there was some legal challenge towards by Jodorowsky because he saw it as being quite reminiscent of the NCAL in terms of some of the ideas and characters and themes. But there is a scene in the beginning when they have an alien form of life on Earth and they put it in a sealed chamber and they're trying to repair. It's like a single cell or sample of this form of life, and they try to repair it. And there's this sequence where the chamber is sealed, and the scientists start crowding, and they're literally peeking through the edge of the lid, like Kamandi and Canus are. And it's like, oh, it's a lady. Oh, it's a beautiful life form. This is really pervy ogling going on. There's a lot of ogling of men, semi-naked women in movies back in the day. Mm-hmm. The pinnacle of which, of course, is Basic Instinct. But yes, I've been listening to Corinne along where it's you must remember this podcast lately, which she's talking about all that. But yeah, that just scene reminded me a lot of The Fifth Element, and even the manifesting of the body, the way the body is sort of being created through this conversion of energy is quite similar to what they do in that film. So, little text for the listeners out there. Comparison shot.
Kamandi and Canus are talking, and then behind Kamandi, there's some energy, some fire, and a hand comes out of it. And Kamandi doesn't see it at first. He says, I can't believe we've engaged in the kind of thing which produces a Frankenstein monster. And he looks over his shoulder. On the contrary, Canus is saying, Kamandi, look behind you. And then Kirby says, no, it's not a Frankenstein monster. But then again, wait until you meet Pretty Pyra. So, like, we got a pretty strong hint here about exactly what it is. especially if you look at the nature of that hand. So we go to the next issue. The cover has nothing to do with the alien. It's tigers, and some of them are shooting at Kamandi, and it says, "Kill the animal before he kills us." And Kirby promises big action issue. I think they've all been big action issues. But yeah, this is issue 34, October of, I've forgotten what year it is.
1975.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because Pretty Pyra bears a very strong resemblance to a Marvel character who came out in, as it happens, Guardians of the Galaxy, a year later, 1976.
Oh.
And I was Emmet's on plagiarism watch once again. But I was looking into it and I was going, is this possibly, again, one of those examples of a character or a piece of concert work from Kirby got stolen and taken up the road to Marvel, because we know that they were doing that. We know that they were literally sharing his art across town to show him up or embarrass him or try and outmatch him, outdistance him, introduce characters and concepts before he had the opportunity to. There's a lot of sabotage going on. There's a character in Guardians of the Galaxy. She was introduced in 1976. Steve Gerber was the writer. Mary Screens, I think, was the artist. And her name is Nikki Gold.
Okay.
And Nikki Gold is an alien. And she comes from a planet. It's Earth 31st century. She's a species of human that comes from a planet where they've survived high temperatures. And she actually is exothermic. She gives off heat. And the heat manifests as her hair.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Pretty Pyra, very similar design. Very, very similar design.
Mm-hmm.
So I did wonder if this was another example of a cheeky sort of bit of theft.
I see. Okay.
Between Marvel. I will send you some links so you can share it with the listener. But yeah, that was my thought on that.
Okay. So
we do finally get to meet her, though.
Right, yeah, splash page, issue 34, we see her, and yeah, Canus says, "I've done it, Kamandi, and I've done it rather well." And Kamandi says, "But Dr. Canus, the alien, is a girl." Now, I was wondering, so Canus used Kamandi's body as kind of a pattern, so why was the body not male? Because the alien is female, and that changed I don't know. It doesn't quite make sense to me, but whatever.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's just the process eventuated in it becoming Pretty Pyra. We all start as female, Tim. In the womb, we all start as female, and then some of us become male. The chromosomes divide and so forth, and some of us don't. And I wonder if that's simply this idea of the alien taking the model of the human genome and then saying, "Oh, well, this is the most perfect form I can occupy." It's usually. And that's why I thought of The Fifth Element and shared that. I've just shared you the video clip for that too, and over email. But whenever science fiction gets into this, and I do wonder if it goes all the way back to the myth of Tiresias, who got to become a woman, and then somebody asked him which gender enjoys sex more, and he was like, "Oh, women," and and he's punished by the gods for spoiling that reveal. There is this recurring idea in storytelling of the perfect form being female. That's a recurring idea. Keeps coming back. I think this is just in that tradition. And the alien, we were told, Dr. Canus told us, wanted to be like Kamandi's people. And having mapped the genome, just went, all right, this is my body, and went with a woman's body. I see it. I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the implication was it wanted to be Kamandi. I think it was like, oh, That's a nice genetic structure you have there.
So
I'd like
heart,
to borrow
lungs,
it for a while. Yeah.
arms, legs,
So on. Yeah.
basic idea, but okay. And she's surprised at like what it's like to now have arms and legs. It's new to her.
And she's also another example in the Kirby tradition of a strong feminine form. You know, we talk about Barda and so forth. This is another example of a physically very strong looking, tall woman, stunning, statuesque, long hair, etc.
And not taking any crap.
Not taking any nonsense at all. Most powerful person in the room. Hair is literally on fire.
Eyebrows are literally on fire.
Also eyebrows, yes. Let's stop the speculation there, Tim.
Right. And she's kind of struggling to walk at first. And Kamandi says she's helpless as a newborn baby. And she says, helpless? Helpless? Bipedal fools, I'll show you who's helpless. Back off slowly. You've touched a nerve, Canus says.
Yeah, he always says the worst thing.
And she's throwing energy bolts at them and chases them outside the ship.
Oh, can we just spend a moment on Kamandi referring to her as Homo Hotfoot? Dear God,
Right.
don't let him name anything.
Yeah, she's a new species of Earth life. Yeah, Doc, Homo Hotfoot.
Oh God.
And yeah, I mean, just as they're running from her, Canus comes up with the name Pretty Pyra for her. And Kamandi comments on it. You sure are a cool one, sir, giving her a name at a time like this.
That's calling attention to the comic book tradition of having exposition dumps in a chase scene or a fight scene, for that matter.
Yeah,
you think breathing would be priority, but
and I know that just he says Pretty Pyra is as good a name as any for, and is interrupted, but I feel like I've heard something is as good a name as any in other comic books, maybe written by Stan Lee.
Right.
It's just a kind of common line for when somebody comes up with a name for something else without having any particular explanation for it.
It's kind of hand wavy, and it sort of calls attention to the fact that the author thinks they're being clever. You know, they're sort of, I'm not going to bother explaining it to you, but this is a reference, so clearly. And yes, the following page, we have Pretty Pyra. The name is now written in this quite fancy script across the top of the page. So yeah, I do wonder if it should have had an explosion effect, or maybe it should have been rimmed with fire to add to the, a title card announcement, as it were.
Yeah. So yeah, now she's going off by herself to get used to her new body. And then Kamandi and Canus turn to what's going on at sea, and the fighting seems to have stopped. Well, the gorillas are not there right now. They punched out. So Kamandi says it's so quiet out there, like the calm before a storm. And back on the ship, they're still like clearing away wreckage and stuff. And Ben is still pestering Tufton about this plan of his with Ram Jam, trying to talk him out of it without any success. And then the gorillas come back. And they've got this huge craft that has like a wedge on the front of it. Their secret weapon.
Yeah. The last couple of issues have been interesting in terms of what we've learned about Tufton and the fact that he is a teenager and the fact that he's a prince trying to live up to his father's expansionist ideals. And in this exchange between himself and Ben Boxer, he more or less says that, right? I'm doing this because I think this is what my dad would want me to do. Mm-hmm. And he even calls it fighting dirty. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's trying to be a warlord, but like I think Ben's sort of hinting that he knows Tufton's heart's not really in it. That's not really who he is. He's closer probably in nature to the giggling teenager who was rolling around on the beach with Kamandi in the previous issue. Like, that's really what he wants to do. So yeah, there's an interesting story happening there, and I think it makes Tufton less one note than maybe another writer would have him be, like a badass general of his father's armies who just wants to kill as many evil, damn dirty apes as possible. I think he's trying to live up to this idea of what his father expects of him, and that's a little bit interesting.
Yeah, so the guerrillas are back. Tufton lets them know that he has their leader. He's shouting through a megaphone. They say, "We hear you. Make your pitch." He says, "I'm not making a pitch. I'm giving you the word, and I'm going to prove that word. Haul up the prisoner." And so that stick, that's not the right word, pole that Ramjam is tied to, they put it up vertically so that the other guerrillas out at sea can see him there. And he announces what he plans to do, and Ben's still there trying to talk him out of it.
Yeah.
And so then we go back to the flying saucer, and they see that the guerrillas have returned. They don't know what's going on with Ramjam. That's kind of interesting, too, that they don't understand everything that's happening out there. They just see that the guerrillas are back, so they think, if we try to fly this ship, then we can chase them away.
Yeah.
So they get into the ship, and they figure out how to get it going. And as they're flying away, Pyra sees them and says, "Come back, you fools, come back. You mustn't fly my translator," in quotation marks. "It's dangerous, dangerous."
Again, they locked a bunch of gorillas in there. They could have smashed up the nav equipment and all sorts of things,
Right. Well, I think didn't Ben and Tufton take them back to the ship?
Oh, no, I know. Yeah, that has happened since. But I'm saying they were locked in there.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is all sorts of trouble it could be got up to.
So then we're on the ship, and we see the flying saucer approaching as Tufton's in the middle of his ploy. And he says, "The UFO, how did it get here? It must be Canus and Kamandi up to some fool trick." And the guerrillas are saying, "Break off and regroup against air attack." So while everybody's distracted with the flying saucer, Ben unties Ramjam and he jumps off the ship. I don't know what happened to the dynamite. We don't see, it doesn't seem to be around his neck anymore. It's not visible at all. Tufton tries to shoot at him, but misses.
Yeah. I think it just dropped to the deck, probably. But yeah.
And is angry at Ben, of course. So the guerrillas are shooting at the flying saucer, and they don't seem to be afraid of it. So Canus says, "We can't give up. Let's buzz that armored rammer." So they knock off the front of that wedge on the front of it. Oh, no, actually, Pyra does that.
Pyra does
because
that. Yeah.
Because the wedge was about to break the flying saucer. And who is saying, I guess the guerrillas are saying, "Retreat, this kind of enemy is too much for us."
Yeah.
Tufton says, "There's a female animal in that fireball. She came from the island." So then the UFO is like flying right towards the ship and just barely misses tigers and structures on the ship. And Ben says, "My lord, they almost sank us." "What?" And then Pyra goes flying by, zish, in a fireball. Ben says, "Holy cow." Now, so she seems to be angry and seems to be chasing the ship. And now the flying saucer gets out of control. It's kind of spinning around. We got a panel of Kamandi upside down saying, "It must be Pyra. She's taking over." The spacecraft flares with energy as Pyra reaches it. It rocks and shudders and surges with power. Then, abruptly, it vanishes. Boom. That's the sound of vanishing. Okay, boom. And the sea is calm once more. Don't miss our next issue. It's classic. It's horrible. It's awesome. It's indescribable. It's the Soyuz Survivor. Okay.
Okay, that's a lot of information.
Well, I mean, he's right. I've never read anything like this before, exactly, but
yeah, I'm intrigued to see where this is going and continue reading.
Yeah.
I think Pretty Pyra is a nice addition to the cast. I hope she survives.
Yeah.
Because women characters haven't done very well in this comic, particularly when they become attracted to Kamandi, which, why would you? But I honestly, I feel outside of some of the nice character work with Ben in particular and Tufton, and some of the banter with Canus and Kamandi, these 3 issues were kind of on a bit of a low ebb in comparison to what we were reading immediately prior and some of the other recent issues. There's been such conceptual highs in the latter half of the Kamandi run that we've been reading that I've just really enjoyed and appreciated what he was just trying out. And this one seemed a bit arbitrary at times. And little things like Ben being left on the beach and then just turning up with the tigers, and the storyline around Ram Jam and rescuing him, and it's just
not enough payoff.
There was a bit of lack of payoff, lack of impact for storytelling purposes, I feel. Yes, there's been a couple of moments here and there where I've gone, I think this needs a little more time to breathe. And
maybe a more interesting conclusion than just, oh, he's fine.
Yeah, exactly that. The alien stuff has opened up a whole new sort of area in this world.
Yeah, now it's not just exploring the post big disaster world, but somebody from another world.
Exactly. So I mean, there's room to move there, but I just wasn't as gripped by these issues as some of the previous ones. I will never forget, android gangsters from fictional Chicago. Incredible, beautiful art, really great story idea. You may disagree on the execution of that story, but I feel like going into it, there's just this wild energy to it. That's kind of what's attracting me to Kamandi so far. And with these, I just feel it's a bit meat and potatoes. Up into and including Pretty Pyra manifesting as this beautiful woman. As I said to you before, it's a familiar trope to me from... It literally, there is a TV tropes article called Born Yesterday, which is all about a woman-like entity who the male protagonist has to explain how to live in the modern world too, and inevitably they fall in love or something like that,
Of course.
And it's creepy because it's Born Yesterday. There is a childlike quality to this woman. That's what makes it creepy. That's what makes it weird. The fact that Kamandi immediately compared Kamandi to an infant, immediately. That's the first thing he does.
Compared Pyra to an infant, yeah.
And then she goes, screw you. And she leaves, she literally didn't have her sea legs. That was the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that. These are sort of tropes that I think are familiar ones, and I'm not as interested in as some of the other stuff we've seen in Kamandi.
But you've never read a story like this before.
The thing is, I have. I have. No, okay. As we've talked about many times, a lot of those stories are stories probably inspired in part by Kamandi.
Sure.
But no, I have read stories like this before, and I think there is an existing sort of fictional canon for animal people and aliens impersonating human women and lost boys on strange adventures in a strange land. All these stories I've read before and exist before this. So yeah, I think it's fun how he's brought all these things together. I think that's fun. But these 3 issues in particular, I just felt I've seen this. I've read some of this. The innovation isn't as exciting as in some of the preceding storylines.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do wish that the Ram Jam thing had concluded a bit more excitingly. It's just kind of like, oh, well, never mind. We're just going to let him escape, and that's nothing to see here.
I assume he's coming back, but I was also disappointed in Ram Jam as a character because, like I said, I compared him to Nick Fury, and I assumed that he would be like a no nonsense, won't break, you'll never break me kind of character. He immediately breaks. He's like, oh God, oh no, ooh, sand monster. So yeah, that's Ram Jam was a disappointment.
Okay. So yeah, 3 issues is going to be about right for an hour's worth of podcast here. So
yes, we've clocked in at the hour mark. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to be on vacation for a while, but hopefully like around September, we'll cover the next 3.
Yeah. Perfect.
Jack Kirby's Kamandi is published by DC. You can help the Deconstructing Comics family of podcasts by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. And go to deconstructingcomics.com to connect to us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, to shop on Amazon to support the show, and to find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode there, or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. That's also the address for submitting your own comics work for possible inclusion in our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week, Critiquing Comics returns with 2 more comics created and submitted by listeners. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.